Hi everyone, it's Laura and I'm here for Mobility from the Ground Up. I'm glad you're joining me today, and we are going to be working on mobility of the feet and ankles today. So I'm really excited to jump into this and get started. So let's check out in a gentle way our ankle and foot mobility right now. So we're going to just sit back and put your legs out in front of you. You can have your hands behind you if you'd like to help support you, or you can have something like a yoga block or rolled up towel or a low ottoman and sit on that if you prefer to sit up and not have your that pressure on your wrist. But all we're going to do here, however you choose to sit, is you're going to make circles, both of them in the same direction, with your ankles. And just see how it feels. Notice if there's any pops, clicks, or tight sensations there in your ankles. See if you feel anything in your feet, and switch directions. If you can't get a good sense of how things are feeling when you're doing both feet, you can stop and just do one at a time. And notice as we're doing these ankle rotations, how your feet go along for the ride, how they might bend and move a little bit, even though I asked you to just do the ankle rotations. It's completely normal. All right, and now we're going to do same seated position. Hopefully you're comfortable. If you're not, find that position you can hold for a little bit, and you're going to do a point of the toe and a flex, a point and a flex. Notice here too, if you're wearing shoes right now, would be if you didn't notice that the shoe might be restricted on the circle, now would be the time. I'm wearing socks here. So I recommend socks, especially if your feet get cold. Or barefoot, whatever you're more comfortable with. So now we're pointing and flexing. The point is actually also a flexion, technically. It's a plantar flexion. And then when we bring the toes up and do the flex, that is dorsiflexion. So plantar flexing, dorsiflexing, and noticing how things feel here. For most of us, we're going to pause here and just let yourself relax. For most of us, we're going to be more comfortable more toward that point where the plantar flexion, the foot's going to want to go there naturally because we tend to be tight in the back of the lower leg and into the back of the upper leg, and we're not as strong in the front of the leg in those muscles. You might already feel a little sore at the top of the foot or the front of the leg just from bringing the top of the foot toward the shin. So do this point and flex a couple more times and noticing, like if you pause, where's your the natural place where your feet want to relax? Is it really pointed? Is it super flexed? We'll use those because that's what most people are comfortable with, point flex. Kind of notice where your ankles and feet happy places. All right. We're gonna do a little toe wiggle here. And from this position, again, change up your position if you need to as we do this. What I'm going to have you do now is actively spread your toes. So I'm going to turn again so you can see any potential toe spread that I have. So I'm wearing toe socks for your viewing convenience. And so we're spreading the toes, trying to see light between the toes here. And then you can relax them. A lot of times when we get into active toe spreading, we can get cramps. So most of our feet are tight, ankles are tight. So if you ever start feeling cramps coming on, just kind of wiggle it out. You can stop and then rejoin our moves here. So toe spread. If toe spreading right now isn't happening for you, this active version of toe spreading, then you can bring your leg across your body. And even if it is working, let's all bring our leg across our body here. And you're going to thread your fingers through your toes. So if you've ever went and got a pedicure, or even if you haven't had a pedicure, you might be familiar with the little things they put between your toes so that the nail polish doesn't rub off as you're walking out the nail salon. But think of your fingers as that, or if you have some of those lying around, you can put them in between your toes right now. Pause, put it between your toes. But what we're doing here is passive toe spreading. So with this passive toe spread, with our fingers in there, and notice my fingers aren't all the way in between the toes. They're not all the way down right at the bottom. They're up at the top because it's too much for my feet for my fingers to come all the way down. And so you might even leave some fingers out of this toe spread here. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a passive toe spread, and I'm turning my ankle in a counterclockwise circle right now with a little hand assist here. So a little bit more passive on the ankle turn here, and then switch directions of your ankle rotation. And if you're sitting on the floor and your low back's aching or upper back's aching, put something under your hips or sit on this one. You can sit up in a chair too. Nice. All right. Go back to both feet out in front and go back to that toe spreading, the active toe spreading. See which foot feels easier. They might actually still feel the same, but notice if the foot that you just did the passive toe spread with, the ankle turn, hopefully that feels a little bit looser for you, a little bit more like you can connect those muscles in the foot. All right, so let's go to the second foot. Again, we're doing that passive toe spread. This one's a little bit harder for me to get my fingers in there. Again, you don't have to put all of the fingers in there. Just do as many as you can, and you don't have to go all the way down. Any cramping, get those fingers out of there. All right, let's do a little ankle rotation here, along with our passive toe spreading. And switch directions of your turn. Nice. So we're working on like I said, feet and ankles today. With the toe spread, we're really addressing the muscles that are in the foot, those intrinsic foot muscles, while the ankle rotation is focusing on your extrinsic foot muscles. So some of them start in the foot and then come across the ankle and go into the lower leg. All right, so back to our feet straight ahead, toe spread. How do your feet feel now? Hopefully a little bit more alive, all right? So we're gonna go into some more active, more weighted versions of toe spreading and then ankle mobility. So if you ever feel like as we're going into these more active and loaded versions that the toe spreading is too much, your foot's cramping, or the kneeling that we might be doing was putting weight down on the ankle. If this is too much, I'm gonna give you some modifications, but you can always come back to these. So know that you can come back to them throughout the rest of our time together. All right, we're gonna come into our rocking position. You can set if you're using something to sit on or have something on in your space, move it aside. We're gonna come into the rock position. So I have my wrists underneath my shoulders and my knees underneath my hips here. If you have a mirror next to you and you can look at this, that'd be great. A lot of times what I see is people's hands are too close or knees are too close, and so we're really in this narrow position. Oh, come on here. My ankles here are pointed right now. So I'm in that plantar flexion. The tops of my foot are on the floor, and I'm going to shift my hips back toward my heels as far as I can and put a little pressure there with my hips. Now, if your knees are unhappy with this, you can take a rolled up, I don't have my rolled up yoga mat with me, but you can take a rolled up towel or yoga mat and place it in between your knees. So you're still getting some weight back there, but you're not doing the extreme flexion of the knees. We can back up Excuse me for one moment. I'm going to show you this rolled up yoga mat version 2 ways. So if your knees are bothering you as we back up, put the yoga mat here. So we're still loading. If the ankles are bothering you here and it's too much load, slip this. If you don't have like rolled up yoga mat, you can use a rolled up beach towel or a big bath towel. Slip it underneath the ankle and then move back and load there. So that'll prevent it from going into an uncomfortable position. So we back up, put some load there. Notice I still have my hands on the ground. My weight is still a little bit in my hands so I can control how much pressure I have here. If you feel comfortable now in this next one, can you sit on the ankles? If you have 2 towels or 2 yoga mats, you could do knees and ankles at the same time. Bolstering is an advanced skill, so use it to your advantage here. So you can always come out of it when you want to. All right. If you have something on your ankle and you want to try, or in between your knees and you want to try this again without that, feel free to do that. See how that feels here. You never want to go to a place of pain or discomfort. And I wouldn't recommend being here for too long. It's kind of like a transitional move that we'll use here in a little bit, because it can cut off circulation to your feet if you're in it for long enough. We're working gently. Last time here with this plantar flexion. Good. Now we're going to go into our dorsiflexion. So we're still going to be in our rock position to start, but we're going to tuck the toes under. For me right now, I basically have my first 3 toes touching the floor. The little ones aren't really touching the floor. I'm going to back up. See how things feel here. Still weight in my arms. And then if you can, reach your toes. Can you tuck them under so that they're gripping the floor? So I went from being like this to here, and I pull my little toe out so I can put some weight on it. All right. So if you can reach back, now pull those toes forward so that they can get flat on the mat, and you'll come up into that kneeling position if it's comfortable for you. So likely you won't need to bolster your ankles here, because usually people are fairly comfortable in this position, but you might need to go back to bolstering the knees here, especially if you're not liking the deep knee flexion. You can always, as you've loaded your toes a little bit more, stretching the bottoms of the feet, you might get a little bit of cramping. Come out of it. You can go back into the toe wiggles and then reset up. And if you can hang, if it feels comfortable, you can hang out here for a little bit. And all you can, whenever I go forward, my little toes unhook from the floor. So that's why I'm reaching down each time to kind of pull them forward so I can get a nice stretch through those as well. Okay, that was getting a little intense for me. So I'm going to come out of it, wiggle out. And you can always just do the rock too. You don't have to come up to the kneel. Just rock back, come forward. So you're not putting an overload of pressure here on the feet or the ankles. All right. So what I'm going to have you do here is we're going to transition between these 2 movements. So these 2 foot and ankle positions. So right now I'm tucked here in this kneeling position. If you don't like kneeling, hands are going to stay down on your surface. You're going to untuck and go into the planks. And you're going to tuck again. This is where I want you to be, especially if you're uncomfortable. You can adjust those toes when you come back to the foot flex position. This is where we start out, and this is where I want you to stay, especially if this is really loading your ankles and feet in new ways. We're gonna point again. Tuck. If you're ready for it, you can always remember, you can always bolster your knees or your ankles here if you'd like. We're gonna kneel in this position, and then we're going to come up a little bit and untuck. So this is like a low kneeling position, a tucked kneeling position. I'm reaching down because my toes don't want to go there. And we're not staying in either of these positions for too long. We're working on the shifting and transferring. If the transfer, you feel like you don't have your balance, put your hands down and then come to that kneeling position. And if you're able to kneel here without the hands there. And then if you're just for balance, you want the hands down as you transition between the two, you do that and then come back to hands off the ground. Let's do this a couple more times. Hands on or hands off the ground as you feel comfortable. These shifts without the hands on the ground require a lot of balance, so knowing where your center of gravity is, so you don't tip over. So if that's not there, that's when you want to put those hands. Let's go back to the pointed position. One more time in each position. So we're going to flex, adjust the toes if necessary, every time it's necessary for me. And then one last time here in the pointed plantar flex ankle position. Let's come on out of that. Give yourself a little break. And let's go to a wide V-sit position. Use roll up yoga mat or towel, yoga block, whatever it might be if you need to elevate your hips so that you feel comfortable seated on whatever surface you're on. And we're going to go back to our nice, easy ankle circles here. Give ourselves a little bit of break before we go into our next bit here, and reverse directions of your circles. Again, you can put your hands back behind you and do this. Relax a little bit if you'd like for the core. And then you're going to point and flex, point, flex. Good. Nice. All right. We've done a little bit of rocking. We've done some kneeling. These are all frontal plane motions. And we're going to do a little bit more frontal plane motion using a low lunge. So this is going to be really nice motion for especially the ankle, but you'll get a little foot fun here. So I'm going to come into a low kneeling position. If this position is uncomfortable for you, you can put a folded up towel under the knee. That's usually the most uncomfortable thing, is just the pressure on the knee. So if that's the case for you, do that. I'd also recommend, if you're feeling a little unbalanced here, so you can still do the work, is have a counter, a chair, or maybe a wall, a staple, something that you can just gently touch or hold on to as we do this motion. So notice here, my hip is above my back knee and my front knee is above my front ankle. So I'm got a very square position here. And then I'm going to slowly move forward. I'm going to keep my hips square to the front to start off here. And my back foot is in that plantar flex position, so the toe point position. So as I go forward, that takes some weight and pressure off the back foot, but then I'm working on my ankle mobility and dorsiflexing as I go forward. I asked you to keep your hips square to the front, so if you can't go through a big range of motion like this, you can stop here. You're still getting some nice dorsiflexion in that front ankle. Then when you go back, you'll feel more weight on the back foot. You're going to feel your leg working to stabilize in the back by pushing the top of the foot down to the floor so that we feel less wobbly. So if you feel really wobbly, push that top of the foot down to the floor and use the strength back there. Good. Let's do one more time forward on this side and then we'll switch sides. My hips are still staying pretty square to the front, and we're going to do that same thing on the other side. All right. So I've got my top of the foot on the floor here. Again, my hip is over my back hip over back knee, and then my front knee is over my front ankle. Hips square to the front. Pushing the floor with the top of that foot to stabilize. And then you can move forward, keeping the hips square, getting some dorsiflexion in the front. Good. Nice and slow. Again, noticing the work in the back leg as well as the range of motion in the front leg. Nice. Let's just do once more here. And then we're going to switch sides again. This time we're going to tuck the back toes. So if having the top of the foot flat on the floor last time felt completely strange, then this is probably the way you normally like to be in a lunge position. If they both feel completely strange, then you're likely not down in this lunge position much, which is common for most people. And then if this feels really weird, then you probably like the top of the foot. That's what you do normally. So notice what feels normal for you, what feels strange, because those are your movement habits. All right, so we've got the toes tucked here. If you'd like, you can get those little toes more involved and tucked under, and you're going to go forward again. And notice here how this movement feels. How does it feel for the back foot working when we bring our weight back over our back knee? Can you go farther? Sometimes our foot position allows our hips to move farther or less far. That foot ankle range of motion impacts our hip range of motion a lot more than you might think. All right, let's switch sides. You're going to tuck those toes under, back hip over back knee over front ankle, and hips stay square to the front. Shift your weight forward. Nice. Again, notice how things feel here. I mentioned when we were just doing the planks and the flexes earlier that most people tend to have a little bit more point than flex in their relaxed position. And so for a lot of people, flexing the toe here gives you a lot more stretch in the front of the hip. Part of that is we're just not, that's not like our natural position. The other part of that again, our foot, ankle, lower leg really impacts that hip. All right, we're going to go back to the other side again. And this time we're not going to keep the hips square. So if you were opening up the hips that whole time, even when I said keep the hips square, try and keep your hips square this time. But if you were trying to really focusing on keeping the hips square like I asked, then pick your favorite foot position. Was it easier to stay balanced with the top of the foot down or with the toes tucked? You pick, because we're mainly focused on this front ankle now. And by opening up the hips, we can get a lot of dorsiflexion here. That's that flex position. So it's active dorsiflexion. So opening up my hips. So when right now my left leg's in front, so my hips turn to face more right. Unlikely that they'll face all the way to the right. Unless you dislocate something, please don't. And as you're going forward here, we're going to do a couple more on this side, but I want to show you, because we're going probably much farther forward than we were when I asked you to keep your hips square. I really want you to make sure that your knee's tracking the same direction as your toe. So as I go forward, that knee keeps moving straight forward. A lot of times what I see most often is the knee wanting to come in. And that's because they're tight in the front of the hips. So the hips may limit how far we can work our ankle dorsiflexion because of the tension here. But just go as far as you can before it might go in or out. Good. Let's switch sides. Last move here before we pull down. Again, pick your favorite, pointed or flexed on the back leg. As you move forward, I've got my right leg in the front. Open up the hips to face the opposite direction of that front leg. So knees tracking forward, the direction of my toes here. If your toes pointed out, then it's probably safest for your knee to go out as well. But if you can get your toes pointed forward, let's try that. Good. So we're loading our flexed ankle here as our body weight moves forward. You've chosen whatever makes you feel more comfortable in the back. Good. One more. Open up those hips. Good. All right. We're going to come back down to our seated position, however you're comfortable. I'm going to come into hands back behind me and feet out in front. Bolster your hips up off your surface as needed. We're going to plank and flex. How does it feel to plank and flex now that we've just loaded these positions? Nice. And then let's go into our passive toe spreading again, those fingers in between the toes. And make those circles. Excellent. Switch directions. How's your ankle feel here? Are there still, for some people, there's that snap, crackle, pop. Hopefully things are feeling a little bit better. There's less tension. Let's switch sides. Maybe less noise for you. Even if there's still noise, it's not always, the noise isn't necessarily harmful as long as there's no pain. So I've threaded my fingers through my toes in that passive toe spread, switching directions of my ankle rotation. Excellent. And I know this is mobility from the ground up, but usually when we're using our feet throughout our day, it's because we're standing or walking. So I'm going to have you finish standing. And I want you to just notice, how do your feet feel on the ground here? How does it feel? You've got some space to walk around. Does it feel different now for your feet and ankles now that we've been working on them for the past 30 minutes? I really hope it does. And I hope that you're able to take a couple things from today's class and keep your feet and ankles feeling excellent. All right. Until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye.